So right now, I want to introduce Judy Rozanski. After retiring from teaching middle school special education, Judy pursued her interest in horticulture. She received two different certificates from the New York Botanical Garden in horticultural therapy and gardening. Following that, she joined the Cornell Cooperative Extension Master Gardener Program. Congratulations, Judy, that you just finished your period and your 2 year period, and now you're all set to go. And now she is a full volunteer. So thank you, Judy, for speaking to us about this wonderful topic. And I will kick it over to you to get started.
Okay, thank you, Hillary. Okay, so good morning, everyone. This morning we'll be talking about gardening in small spaces, and it's about rethinking your garden. Okay. I'll start with an overview. We're going to talk about the popularity of small space gardens, why and what, some first considerations, where are your spaces, other important considerations, the light, water, etc., types of containers, additional techniques that can be used in addition to containers, what you can grow, rotating crops, and then some final considerations. So there's a lot to talk about. Okay. So first off, why are small space gardens so popular? Well, the obvious, in addition to only having a small space, there are other considerations. One might be that you're renting space, or your HOA won't allow you to dig a full garden. You may already have a large garden space, but you want to add color or variety in another area. You may want something closer to your home that makes it more accessible to you. I know for myself, as I'm getting older, going out there and gardening gets more and more difficult. And sometimes you want to have something on your deck or, close to your door. Another reason, you just simply may want to experiment with something new, try a flower or a vegetable that you've never tried before. And the last one, you just may no longer want to or be able to care for a large space garden. So some of the first considerations, it's not just, I'm going to put this in a container and here we go. Okay, so first you have to think about, what is it that you want to achieve? Are you looking to have an edible garden, grow food for yourself and your family? Do you just want a place to relax and enjoy plants and nature? Or you want a beautiful space maybe to welcome you when you come home from a day of work? Another consideration, what spaces or space can you use? Where can you do this planting? And as even with a large space garden, what are your site conditions, which we will get into further in a few moments. Another thing that a lot of people forget about, no matter what the size of the garden, what are you willing and able to grow? Okay, and willing is an important consideration, because you don't want to plant vegetables or flowers and then you're away half the time and they don't get watered or get taken care of in the way they need to be taken care of. So you really have to think about that first. Okay. And the other thing, even though we're talking about small space gardens, they really still need to be well thought out. Small space, big planning. Okay. Okay. Maybe you don't think you have room for a garden. Well, think again. If you have any of the following, you can have a garden: a deck, a wall, a porch, a railing, a rooftop, a driveway, a walkway, an overhang, a step, a terrace, a balcony, a window, a shelf, a bench, a tree, a yard, and you could probably add more things to that list. And the other thing to think about is, what is a garden? Gardens are different things to different people. Some people may not have any outside space. Maybe they only have a small apartment. You can still have a garden if you have no outdoor space. Okay, so let's look at some of those ideas I just talked about. Okay. Now, this one incorporates multiple ideas. You can see that under the tree, so understory planting, whether it's under trees or under larger plants, you can plant things. You can have containers on the ground. You can have things hanging on the wall. You can and see in this picture that there are these containers hanging on the wall. Here is somebody's deck, multiple plantings, vegetables, fruits, herbs on the railing, on the floor, just, quite a combination of things. Look at this. Look how pretty this is. This is just, a little porch area or a little deck area, just beautiful flowers. Maybe you're not interested in an edible garden. Maybe you just want something to welcome you when you come home, from a day of work. You just want to be able to sit on that porch and just enjoy the flowers and the trees that are next door. Just a little meditative area. Here are some other ideas. You see this shelf on the left with just, a few clay pots. And maybe some of those plants need a little bit of water, it looks like, but that may be all you have, but that's your garden. Okay. The one on the right, you can see somebody took a skid and just attached some pots to it. That could be put up on a wall. Doesn't take up a lot of space. Here, this garden on the left incorporates multiple uses. There are things on the table. There's a raised bed on the left. There are shrubs. There are hanging pots. There are containers on the ground. Okay, there's even, you can see there's a vine trailing over the door. So again, multiple uses. And on the right, we have here beautiful clay pots along a driveway or, a walkway there up against the house. Here somebody has a small balcony with a number of plants, both, edible and just flowers to enjoy. We'll talk about it later, but things, you have to be careful about with balconies is the weight of the plants that you're putting up there. Okay. Okay, here are some different, pots that people have put on steps and different ways to arrange them. You could have all your pots matching, if you like things to be equal, you put the same amount, how you space them next to each other, or you could have just a single pot. Here is a corner of a rooftop. Again, a rooftop, you need a landlord's, go ahead if it's an apartment building. And again, you need to think about weight, and you also need to think a couple of things about water. One is make sure that you not watering and it's going to leak down into a neighbor's apartment. And the other thing about roofs is where's your water access? You don't want to have to be carrying up pots of water. If you have a hose nearby, it makes things a lot more convenient. Okay, there's still more possibilities in addition to those that we just talked about. Maybe if you have a home or a condo, you can share space with a neighbor, and you can garden together and work together. You may ask your landlord for gardening space, and it helps if you offer to share your harvest with him or her. You can join a community garden, or you can even start a community garden. The possibilities are limitless. Okay, so as with all planting, no matter what kind of garden or situation you have, the three primary things you need to think about for the plant's needs are the sun, water, and soil. With the sun, you have to consider how many hours of direct sunlight does an area receive. And in addition to that, where does it fall in that area? Most vegetables require 6 to 8 hours of direct full sunlight per day. And if you don't have 6 to 8 hours of direct sunlight in an area, don't despair. There are many vegetables and herbs that will, thrive with less sunlight. Also, as far as the sun, you have to think about, when you're trying to decide how much sunlight an area gets, is what is the angle of the sun? Remember, the sun position changes throughout the day. If you go out at 10 o'clock in the morning and you say, oh, this is a bright sunny area, this is going to be great for my tomatoes. Well, before you can make that decision, you need to come out every couple or more hours and double check, well, where is the sun now? Is that other area still getting that light? Again, like I said, the sunlight varies during the day. One great thing about containers, if you use containers that are not too heavy, you can kind of follow the sun through the day. You can move your containers, which is also another options. But the amount of sunlight will definitely have a big impact on what you can or can't grow. Okay, water. We all know that plants need water, and various plants need different amounts of water. But the most important thing when you're considering where to place things is close access to water. It's going to make your life a lot easier. Okay. And then a third important consideration is the soil that you're using. Now, through the majority of this presentation, I'm talking about using containers or raised beds. And actually, for me, a container is anything that is not going directly into the ground. So you need to use a high quality, soil-less, and that's a key word, soil-less, potting mixture. Those are the potting mixtures you can buy in your big box store, from your garden center, or maybe you make your own, but it is not actually soil. Actually, what you will find most of the time is it's peat moss. And that's what's the best thing to use when you're planting in containers and raised beds. Ground soil, or what's known as garden soil, is just too thick and heavy, and water doesn't drain through it. The plant roots cannot get through it, and it's very difficult to grow, for your plants to grow properly. Okay. Soilless mixtures, they drain well, and they also contain some nutrients and fertilizers, and they're also more lightweight than soil. But you will need to replenish the nutrients during the growing soil. Just a couple of caveats with the soil. When you have leftover soil in a bag, make sure you close it completely and that it's airtight and keep it dry. These days, people are also talking about with the soilless potting mixtures because they're mainly peat moss. And, so sustainability becomes an issue. And some people are trying to move away from peat moss. And so they're looking for soilless mixes that may contain more coir, which is that fiber that comes off of coconuts, and also perlite and vermiculite, which are made from lava. The reality too, though, is that all extractions, no matter what you use, I mean, does leave an environmental footprint. So, what you choose to use is up to you. And if you do want to switch away from the peat moss mixes, you should do it a little bit at a time to see, because to see how your plants react to it. It will be different reactions from the plants and their ability to grow. And you may need to experiment with differences in how much water you use. Okay, here's a water alert. Most container grown plants need more frequent watering than in-ground plants. The water drains through the pots. There's less surface space to hold the water. So again, they need more frequent watering, and certain pots like clay pots, which happen to be my favorite, are also very porous, and water evaporates even through the sides of the containers. So you need to check, you want to, use that one finger rule, put one finger into the soil to see, whoops, let's see, how did I get over here? Okay, now we're back. Okay, so one finger to see if the soil feels moist, and if it's totally dry, then it's definitely time to water. And some clay pots, you may even need to water several times a day during the really hot days of summer. Okay, fertilizer alert. Container grown plants require more frequent fertilizing due to the nutrients leaching out during watering. Okay, it's recommended that you use liquid fertilizers rather than those slow release granules, which sometimes leach right out or go right out the drain holes, and the plants never get them. And it's also easier with liquid fertilizers. You can just apply them while you're watering your plants. You just need to follow the directions on the containers. As a general rule, flowers, maybe about once a month, you might want to fertilize, and vegetables maybe every 2 weeks at about half strength. And you can just use a well-balanced organic fertilizer, or even compost. Compost that you make works as well. Just maybe keep a diary and keep track of how often you're fertilizing and what you used. Okay, now here's our 3 nutrients that most important for your gardens. You have nitrogen, which is great for healthy green foliage. Your phosphorus, which is for strong roots and stems, and potassium, which is for overall plant health and growth. Okay, and we're going to come back to these later. Okay, so now what can you put your plants in? Okay, we're still in first considerations, all of these things, containers allow limitless flexibility. They come in all sizes, materials, colors. It can be store-bought, recycled gallon buckets, flower pots, half barrels, hanging pots. And as I mentioned previously, for the purposes of this presentation, as far as I'm concerned, containers are anything that is you're not planting directly in the ground. And of course, some of us know we've seen some other containers. You see toilets, wheelbarrows, dresser drawers, tires, all sorts of things, and hay bales too. People plant in. Okay. Certain things, though, you do have to be careful about if you are planting edibles. So for instance, I wouldn't plant edibles in a tire or in treated wood. You have to be careful with that. Okay, more important considerations when you're choosing your containers. You have to make sure that there are adequate drainage holes. Some of those glazed ceramic pots are beautiful. They don't always come with drainage holes, and you would need to do that yourself, whether you turn them over, take a nail and bang it in and open up some holes. Okay. You need to know the size of your plants at maturity and the necessary soil depth when choosing containers for them. And those, you can ask at your local garden center. And deeper is better than wider, so that the roots have, space to grow down and really anchor your plants. Okay. And again, if you're using recycled materials, you want to make sure that you know the source of, those containers. So for instance, people like to use plastic gallon containers. If they previously had paint in them, I wouldn't recommend that. You want to make sure if you're using plastic gallons like that, that they're food grade. Okay. Also something like, whoops, wait a minute. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so there are other materials such as resins and fiberglass and metal. Some of them are very expensive, although they are attractive. But you have to be careful with metal and also black containers, which retain heat and also are very hot to the touch. Okay, and they can end up damaging plants if you're not careful. Okay, what can you grow in a container? You can grow vegetables, flowers, shrubs, fruits. Sorry. Okay. Fruit, trees, and vines. Basically, anything that you can put in the ground or a full garden, you can put in a container. And again, when I say container, it could be a raised bed, it could be a large flower pot, whatever you happen to be using. Okay. You should look for dwarf and compact varieties, which have been developed specifically for containers, and also varieties that are disease resistant. As far as tomatoes, for an example, there are different varieties. There are determinate and indeterminate. If you're looking at containers, then you should be looking for determinate tomatoes, which are, the bush varieties that you will know how much space they need. Okay. Okay. So again, know the size of your plants at maturity. and the necessary soil depth. Okay, now important considerations when choosing containers, some more. Consider the weight of the container when full. And that's the key part, when they're full. You can pick up a container and say, oh, yeah, okay, it's not a problem. I can move this around if I need to. But think about once it's full and your plants are growing, the weight is going to be a lot different. So you need to match your pot to the plant and match your plant to the pot. And so let's now look at a few container options. Okay, raised beds I've been talking about. And, this may look like there's a lot of raised beds there, but, you just might have one of these, not a whole set, but they were raised beds, even, with long, tall legs, so that if you have trouble bending or don't want to bend, or if you're in a wheelchair, raised beds, all shapes and sizes. And this one down here on the right, you could see it has the grids. It's already set up for square foot planting, which is a great way to maximize space. And you can, grow quite a few things in there. So again, the height of the bed, makes it easier for you and allows you to work comfortably. Okay, and just again, no treated wood. Cedar is actually one of the best woods to use for raised planters because it, doesn't rot easily, and it can take the moisture over long periods of time, and it's untreated. Okay, here on the left, you have some other raised beds, an example. And on the right, you could see someone has taken cement blocks for their planting. Works great, but this is one of those examples. I would only use cement blocks if I was planting ornamentals. I wouldn't put food. Okay. Okay, here's a larger garden, but it's really just the raised beds that we're looking at. And this is nice. You may just have room for one bed, not a full garden like that, but that's what they look like. Okay, here we have milk crates. People like milk crates, and you can see you can stack them so that they're at a comfortable height for you. People usually line the milk crates with burlap. That's a good thing to line with because it's natural, it's organic, and it allows the water to drain. I know there's I think it's still there, an upscale New York City restaurant that I don't know if they still do, but they grew, I think, most of the produce for their restaurant up on the roof in milk crates. I think it was called River Park. Okay, clay pots, which I talked about before. Just a few things about these. Beautiful, all shapes and sizes, but A, they can be heavy. B, they're porous and the plants may need more frequent watering. And it's also best to, overwinter them inside, at least in a garage or a basement, because they tend to crack in the cold. Okay, fabric grow bags have become very popular over the last few years. They are extremely lightweight, and you can see they have handles. You can and they're easy to move around. You just pick them up by the handle and move them. They're also washable at the end of the season. Okay, here we have some plastic containers, store-bought and recycled. Again, anything, make sure plastic is food grade. And if it's something recycled, you want to make sure that it's, sanitized and, disinfected properly. Okay, another option, growing up. So vertical planting. If you have limited ground space, grow upwards. You can use trellises, hanging baskets, wall pocket planters. Hanging baskets, there are varieties of cherry tomatoes that you can grow in hanging baskets, and they allow more space underneath for more planting. So let's look at some of those ideas. Okay. On the left, you can see there's that tire on the left. I hope that's not anything edible in there. Okay, but you have some things on the floor, on the ground, and then someone just added some shelves along this wall. And on the right, what they've done with the lettuces, it's lovely and saves a lot of space underneath for other things being planted. Okay, here's more vertical planting. There's a lovely trellis on the left. You can see they've added, to the raised planter, the trellis. And so these, squash, I believe, will trail up and then even underneath, in the middle there. So once those vines cover that area, you'll have a shady area for something that maybe, needs less sun. On the right, here's somebody else's trellis growing up. Okay. And you can see you can use, stakes, dowels, tree branches. Doesn't have to be elaborate. Here's an elaborate wall that somebody built with pockets in it for putting in potted plants. Okay, on the left, we have someone else's trellis made from, looks like willow, that willow fencing. You can buy that at the garden center, and then you could just tie, they have rope around it for the trailing vines. On the right, someone took some of those fabric grow bags and put some stakes into them. And then across the top, they created another like portico for those vines to continue growing. And again, underneath you have space to put other, like maybe shade plants, or maybe even a place to sit. And here's some things that people did with skids. Again, the skids, I wouldn't put edibles in a skid, because a lot of those skids are treated with things that you don't want in your food. And here's just an example of the full sun, the 6 to 8 hours. And when we say 6 to 8 hours, and we're talking about those full sun plants, the closer to 8 hours you go, the better. And you could see cucumbers, eggplants, squash, tomatoes, and then you have basil and oregano and rosemary, quite a few things that you can grow. But then look again on the part sun side. Look at all the things you can grow. And this is what, a lot of people are looking more for this when they're looking for those small spaces. I mean, you've got herbs, you've got vegetables, you've got berries and fruit, and just so many things that you can grow. Okay. And your faster maturing plants such as radish and cabbage and lettuce, as those are growing, you can actually use them while they're growing, and you can use them as microgreens. You could just go out and pull a leaf or a few leaves off and throw them into your salad. Another way to extend, which means you don't need to use even more space, is succession planting. You plant like every couple of weeks faster growing things, and it just keeps giving. And it's a good idea when you're planting, especially succession planting. Again, a diary is very helpful. That you keep notes of when you planted something and when it was ready for harvest. Okay, crop rotation, which is not something a lot of people think about. When they're gardening in small spaces, they think, well, that's only if you have a big garden. But it's not true. You could use crop rotation even when you're planting in containers. Okay, so crop rotation is a system for growing a different crop in a particular piece of land each growing season. Okay, the benefits: it helps to build fertile soil, healthy soil. It diminishes problems with diseases, pests, and weeds. Okay, crop rotation is an important and beneficial factor when planting a vegetable garden. Problems with diseases, insect pests, and soil fertility can increase when the same crop is planted in the same area in successive years. And what I've done, because I do plant a lot in containers, I make sure I label or keep a list of what I've put in each pot. I have my pots numbered. And so I might say, number 3, tomato, so that I know the following year not to plant tomatoes or other members of that family in that pot. Crop rotation disrupts pathogens, insects, and nematodes by removing the host that is required for them to complete their life cycles. Pests can remain in the soil for a long period of time. As a result, research has shown that a single crop should only be grown in the same spot or same pot a maximum of once every 3 years. This is known as a 3-year garden rotation. Related vegetables share disease concerns, so a true rotation needs to be between vegetable families. Okay, usually a 3-year rotation is advised, meaning that there will be 2 years of unrelated vegetables in the middle between related vegetables. And here you can see in this chart, it lists the different families and would help you, determine what to not plant successively. Okay, here's a crop rotation example. This is a 3-year rotation. And you could see in the first year, tomato, legume, and a carrot. And then the next year that moves over, the carrot moves over, everybody moves over, so that after 3 years, you'll be back to where you started. Okay, here's another one. This one is a 4-year crop rotation, but same idea. Okay, you have your families, the legumes, the root veggies, the brassicas, and the fruiting vegetables. Okay, so a few more ideas about your small space. Create a theme garden. Uh, Themes could be edible garden, pollinator, a pizza salsa garden, a shade garden, rainbow, children's, salad, sensory, native, but whatever you choose, be bold and express yourself. Play around, see what you enjoy. And finally, just start small and enjoy. And that's it.
Awesome, Judy. Thank you so much. That was so great. I love all the gardens that you put at the end, like having a pizza garden or a salad garden. That's always so much fun.
Yeah, it is fun.
And now if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A. We'll give it a couple of minutes for to see if anything comes up. And as we're waiting for these questions to come in, a reminder, next month we are having the shade gardening webinar with Donna Lassiter, and that one will be on Wednesday, May 14th at 10 a.m. And there have been some questions about if these are being recorded, and yes, they are, and they will be put on our website after the conclusion of the entire series. So they are being recorded, and if there's anything that you missed or want to check back at, we will definitely have them recorded for all of you to look at. Okay, so we'll give it a couple more minutes for some questions. And I have a question for you, Judy. Was there ever any crops that you have a hard time? Like, what is your favorite and least favorite plant for in a container garden? Are there some that you've had problems growing or some that work really well all the time?
For me, tomatoes and cucumbers work well. It took me a while to quite figure them out, and also to I had a few squirrels and birds that were constantly coming because I have most of my containers on my deck because my yard is just too many deer. At one time, I actually did catch a deer coming up my steps. I couldn't believe it, up to the deck. But they grow well, and I think it's the amount of sun they were getting. Things I personally haven't tried corn, but I don't think corn is, it's probably not even worth it if you could, because how much corn can you put into a container, you know? But yeah, those are my favorite. And also I enjoy the lettuces and like mesclun because they grow so fast, and you can use them on a daily basis. And those you can really do this succession planting because they grow so fast. So you always have a crop. And when you're about to run out, you have a new crop.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so I don't see any questions. So I think, Judy, thank you so much for presenting. It's always a great time to hear you talk about what you can do with small spaces or make it more accessible to where you are. So
Mhm.
thank you so much for presenting, and thank you everyone for coming. Happy to have you. And oh, we have one question about deer resistant suggestions for perennials and annuals. I will say that I'll kick it off and say that just because it's deer resistant doesn't mean that the deer won't eat it. They're just less likely. And that we have a fact sheet on our website that we can definitely, oh, we have questions coming in now. We have a fact sheet on our website that we can always send out to help with different plants that are more deer resistant for our area. And Judy, if you have anything else to answer?
I think you said it best. I know that fact sheet is very helpful. Yeah.
We also have a question about when to start planting.
When?
And yes,
Okay, well,
and
I was just going to say it depends on what, because different plants have different requirements. Also, you have to consider, do you want to start your plants indoors or do you want to direct sow them outdoors? I mean, that makes a difference. I mean, if you're starting plants indoors, it's getting late already to get started
sure.
for some plants, but it really does depend on the plant. And there are also some plants like some of your root vegetables and things like peas, which really are best just direct sowed outside. You don't even want to start them small and transplant them. They're just best grown from seed.
Yeah, and those you can start now.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And for anything that is a tender vegetable or something like that, I know everyone always used to say Mother's Day, but it's actually Memorial Day when you want to plant
Yeah.
those plants that aren't necessarily from our area and don't like the cold too much, like the tomatoes and peppers, things like that. You wanna hold off as long as you can, because having them in the cold doesn't make them grow faster. Um, how do you keep squirrels away?
How do I keep squirrels away?
Yeah,
I wish I knew. I'm at the point where I guess I just decided I pretty much have to live with them. I mean, I've tried, you know, I don't want to use chemicals or anything like that, but I've tried putting netting over some of the plants. I go out there and make noise. I've tried planting aromatic herbs to keep them away, uh, all sorts of things. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And I really just think some of those animals we just have to learn to share.
that's a great way to put it because a
Yeah.
lot of times with squirrels they will not startle easily and while they might be scared of something at first they'll quickly learn that it's okay and nothing's going to happen to them so yeah putting them closer to your house so you can be close by to yell at them when they come planting some for them to eat too is always
Yeah.
another option yeah I totally agree with you Judy
Yeah.